Okay, so now how do we execute this pipeline and see that in action on GitLab CI/CD platform? Well, first of all, we're building a pipeline for a specific project, right? So when this logic gets executed, it will run tests for a specific application, it will build image of that application and then push that image, which means, of course, this pipeline has to be defined for a specific project or Git repository. And then the question is, how does GitLab CI/CD know that this project needs to be built using this pipeline? Well, it's pretty easy actually. So let's see that in action. First of all, I have prepared a very simple project, which is a Node.js project with a very simple UI. We have just one index.html file. We have one server.js file, which is the backend part, and we have one test. So that's all that is for that application. So for now, don't worry about the code inside or the logic. We're going to focus on how to build this project using the GitLab CI/CD pipeline. And you will find a link to this project in the video description. It is a public project, so you should be able to see that. Now, when you open the project, as a first step, you will want to make your own copy of the project so that you can work on it individually, you can build pipelines on it, and so on. So in order to make your own copy of this project, simply use this fork button here. So when I click on it, I'm able to basically create a clone or a copy in my own account, right? So just choose your GitLab account name, whatever that is, and the project name. You can rename the project if you want, and then fork the project. And once you have your own copy, you basically repeat the steps that I'm going to show you for your own copy of this project. Okay, so we have this application with some simple logic. We have the standard git ignore file and readme. And we want to add this pipeline logic to our repository so that GitLab CI/CD can build this project or run the tests, build the project into a Docker image. And in order to do that, we simply add a file here called gitlab-ci.yml. Again, the naming should be exactly like this. So this, for example, will not work because that's exactly the file name that GitLab CI/CD detects or expects. And at the beginning of the file, we have to add a dot. So dot files are, as you probably already know, and this is supposed to be a hidden file, .gitlab-ci.yml. And as you saw immediately after I added the dot at the beginning, GitLab detected that this is the pipeline file and basically filled this part automatically. And that's the reason why we have to use exactly this name, because then GitLab is able to automatically detect it and recognize it as a pipeline file. So once we have that, let's go and copy the logic that we have here and paste it in the YAML file. And that's it. So we're adding a YAML file that describes how the application should be built in our project. And here's an important thing. As soon as I commit these changes, so as soon as this file becomes part of the application code or the repository code, GitLab will actually detect that I have this pipeline file here, and it will immediately execute the pipeline for the project. So let's see that in action. So I'm going to commit the changes. And first of all, we see this tick here that says the GitLab CI configuration is valid. So it actually validated our YAML configuration. So if we had misspelled the attribute name or had some wrong logic here, it would have validated that immediately. And now the GitLab CI.yml file is part of our application code, as you see right here. There are a couple of things I want to highlight here. First of all, the pipeline logic of the application becomes part of the application code itself. So we're not only hosting code or the logic of the application in the same repository, we're also including code that defines how this application should be built, which is again part of this infrastructure as code trend, where we keep everything as code, whether it's the application logic or configuration logic or build logic, etc. So that's one part. The second part is, by including this file here, GitLab CI/CD actually detected automatically this file in the project and executed whatever logic is defined here. So the question is, how do we see that? What actually happened in the background? Because in the UI, currently we don't see anything. Well, for that, from the repository tag, where we are currently, right, that's the repository part, we move to the CI/CD tab or the CI/CD section. So the repository section basically includes all the information about the application code itself, and the CI/CD is the part where we can manage the pipeline or the CI/CD part of our application. And for that, we have to switch to the CI/CD section to see the pipeline executions for a project and also to be able to configure it. So if I click inside, you see that we have a list of pipeline executions. So because I committed that file, or immediately after I added the GitLab ci.yaml file, GitLab automatically detected this file and executed whatever logic was inside without any additional configuration. Now in the CI/CD section, we actually have a couple of other options. First of all, I said that the basic building blocks of any GitLab CI/CD pipeline are the jobs, right? So we have own section where the list of jobs that got executed are defined. So we have run tests, build image, and push image jobs that we defined. And here we see that all of them got executed successfully, as well as duration of how long each job execution actually took. And for each job, if I click on them, we can actually see detailed logs of the commands that got executed as well as their outputs. So for example, our echo commands in the script attributes, before script, after script, etc., they're all printed out here. So preparing test data, running tests, cleaning up temporary files, and so on. So this means whenever you have an error in one of your jobs, you can actually check the logs to see exactly what happened. And let's actually also see that in action. So let's change our pipeline configuration and break something on purpose to see one of the failing jobs. And in order to change the pipeline logic, we can either go back to the repository files and edit this file here, or for a convenience, we actually have what's called an editor section here inside the CI/CD tab. If I click inside, it will take me directly to the edit view of my pipeline. So that's kind of a convenient shortcut if I want to test out or change the pipeline logic for my application. So let's say in the build image job, we have some wrong command that cannot be found, and that will result in an error. So I'm going to commit the changes, and as soon as I do, you see that GitLab detects that a change was made in the pipeline file, and it reruns the pipeline immediately. And again, we have lots of shortcuts from each view where we can directly go to the pipeline, or we can just go to the pipelines list and see the last pipeline execution. Like here, if I go to the jobs, then again I have a list of job executions, run tests was fine, and build image failed. And let's go and check the logs. And right here we see wrong command, command not found, job execution failed. So going back to the jobs, you see that it has useful details about each job and it lets you check the logs. However, if I execute this pipeline 20 times or 50 times, plus if I have more than 3 jobs in the pipeline, it will get really cluttered. So it will be pretty difficult to have a proper overview of these jobs. So it doesn't give a good high-level overview, like which jobs belong together, what is the workflow exactly that we're executing, and for that we actually have this pipeline view. We have a list of pipeline executions on each commit, and if we click on the status on one of the pipeline executions, you will see a much nicer view of the jobs that got executed. And we can also click on individual jobs directly from here to see the logs. So the pipeline is the whole workflow process or the CI/CD pipeline process defined in the GitLab ci.yaml file. So as you see, no extra configuration was needed from our side to configure this build workflow for our application. And the best part of it is that it becomes part of the code, so it becomes easier and more natural way for developers to manage their application pipelines. And on every code change, whether you change something in the application logic or in the pipeline logic, every time we commit those changes, GitLab will automatically re-execute the pipeline defined here. Again, no configuration needed, no webhooks or any extra configuration required. So as a developer, you have everything in one place, and you can even manage the access and permissions to the project CI/CD pipeline from the GitLab based on the access and permissions of the GitLab project. So that makes things a lot more convenient.